So I first read Robert Walser when I was a teenager, and I was studying at a school for the arts, and I was just in love with literature, and a teacher brought him in for us to read, and I was just really excited by his way of telling a story and the way that he wasn't interested in plot. He wasn't even interested in creating psychological character, but there was psychology in his stories, and everything was so playful. The language was just so imaginative, and I was a teenager. I was at the age when you can really, really fall very hard in love with literature and art, and he was my first literary love. And then I sort of became obsessed with him, and I was learning German at school. That was the first foreign language that I was studying properly. And so, after I had read, there were only 2 books in English at that time that Christopher Middleton had translated, and I read them both right away. I was 16 years old in school. We read them at school in class. And then I tried translating him. A teacher encouraged me, and it was just really, really exciting to look at, as somebody who was learning German, who, once I knew how the German language worked, I could see that what he was doing with German was incredibly strange and special and exciting. And so all of this came together: literature, language, imagination, a lot of excitement. So that's sort of how it happened. I never, if you told me then that I would be translating him all these years, I've translated, I think, 8 of his books meanwhile, and now I'm writing his biography. So I've really been working with him for 35 years not with pauses, with interruptions, but pretty intensively. So I've been studying him my whole life, which is crazy. So while I'm writing the biography, I'm finding notes that I made 25 years ago, which is really crazy. It's a strange feeling. So I sort of grew up with this author.
Also in deinem Vortrag hast du darüber gesprochen, über die Schönheit. Könntest du das vielleicht noch ein bisschen ausführen, oder was das genau für ein Kontext ist, in dem du die Schönheit, die Beauty kontextualisierst, oder was du damit meinst?
Okay, so with beauty, by the beauty of language, I guess what I mean is there's something about the rhythm of a Robert Walser sentence that is just, it's him. There's a melody to them, but it's a strange melody. It's surprising. He's also not afraid to be silly. He will make rhymes. He will write, wenn alles so weiß ist, weiß man alles viel besser in der Stunde. It's really playful, but also this da 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 da. That's how he sounds. There is a sort of characteristic rhythm to his sentences that's very musical, and he's very aware just of the vowels that he's using, the consonants, really, of language as a plastic medium that you make music with. I guess it's the music, a combination between the musicality of his language and the unorthodox, unconservative way that he makes up words and puts words together in in different ways. He might use the word Bekömmlichkeit, where he's talking about not what the word actually means, but, meaning, can you get the thing or not? The availability of something. So he's making the word mean the thing like it sounds like it's supposed to mean, as opposed to the thing it actually means. He's so inventive. He's so, such an original thinker in language. I guess that's where I find the beauty of his work. But also I'm very touched by his characters. In the novels he does a little bit of creating character through psychology, but in most of his work he creates character through language, as opposed to through the more conventional 19th century sense of psychology for creating a literary figure. In most of his later work, he's just making us see a person with a clump of language. And it does wind up being moving. You do, in the story, A Sort of Cleopatra that I was talking about before, you do wind up feeling something for this woman who feels oppressed by all of the modernity, and he's using language in an oppressive way, in a sense. He's just drowning her in language, and there's a sense that you just feel her saying, "Help, help! Can I just have some nothing, please? I really just like a little bit of nothing, or something real, not all this stuff, all this chaotic language." And so he makes you feel something just through the chaoticness of the language. That's also a form of beauty.
Wer liest heute Robert Walser in Amerika? Wie sehen diese Leser aus? Gibt es typische Robert Walser Leser in Amerika?
That's a really good question. Who is reading him now? In a way, it's hard to know because people buy books, but I think people who read other, great literary authors, great modernists, the people who are reading Kafka and Thomas Mann are also reading Walser. I mean, there's a big overlap between the Kafka lovers and the Walser lovers. But a lot of artists are a lot of young American artists are very interested in Walser now, and a lot of young writers are very excited about him. I keep going to readings events, and I meet a lot of people who love his work who are still in their 20s. So, I think he's got a very young audience as well as an older audience. But it's hard to say, you don't always know who's buying the books. I hope everybody's buying the books, I hope everybody's reading. I wish Donald Trump were reading him. I don't know if he knows how to read, though.
Eine letzte Frage. Du hast gesagt, dass du jetzt an einer Biografie arbeitest. Wie weit bist du da schon, oder wie kann man da kommen?
So, I'm writing a biography of Robert Walser. I'm currently on my 5th deadline, which really ought to be the last deadline, except my 5th deadline that my very patient editor at Yale University Press has given me is August 1st, and today is the 17th of July. Therefore, that's 2.5 weeks, I think, if my math is right. I have written 14 chapters, and I have one big chapter to go. I've written about 625 manuscript pages, and I have about 40 pages to go. So maybe I can write those in the next month. That's my plan. So it'll still be a little late, but before the end of August, I really want to turn the book in. I've been working on it very seriously for 6 years and kind of not so seriously for about 15 years. So, I don't know how to write a biography. How do people learn this? I love Robert Walser, and I've been studying him my whole life. And so then I, at one point, said, okay, I'm going to write a biography. And at one point, I had a grant, and then another grant, and then a publisher's contract, and I've been writing this thing, and now I have to finish it, and it has to make sense, and it has to have a beginning, middle, and end. And it has a beginning and a middle. It doesn't have an end yet, but it will have an, although I started writing the epilogue. So it sort of has an end, although it's not all the way done yet, the epilogue. But, it'll be finished soon, and I've learned so much. I mean, I learned something yesterday. I'm still doing research as I write. Yesterday, I was interested in the question, how does, in Bern in the last years, Robert Walser moved a lot. He moved from room to room, furnished room, sometimes stayed for a month, sometimes 2 weeks in one case. How did he find these rooms? And I went to the Schweizerische Nationalbibliothek, the Swiss National Library, and started talking to the librarians, help me. We looked at the Bern newspapers. I looked at the Bund and the, what's the other one? The
Berner Zeitung?
Yeah, the Berner Zeitung. So I looked at the Berner Zeitung, and I looked at the Bund, and I wasn't finding a lot of classified ads, kleine Annoncen, in there. And then I asked the librarian, there has to be something else. And he went and looked around, and then yes, there was an Annoncenanzeige der Stadt Bern that was already published in the 1920s, And they have bound volumes of it in the library, and I went and looked at it. And ziyada, I found the ads for some of the rooms where we know he lived. And so I found out yesterday, for example, that the room that he moved into on May 1st, 1926, he found that room on April 30th, one day before. And the next day he was already officially registered as living in that room. And I know that he found it on that day because I looked at the day before and the day before and the day before and the day before, and like 10 days before, that room was not advertised. But the day before it was advertised. And if he had found it before, the person wouldn't have paid for another advertisement 10 days later or more. So I know he found it the day before, so he just moved really last minute. And I think he probably did that a lot. I found another case where I think he found the room 4 days before he moved. So I'm still learning, and every time I learn something new, I go and put it into the biography. I keep changing the book. Every time I learn something new, the book changes. And then eventually I will give it to my editor, and then it will be published, and then I don't know if I can change it anymore after that. But I'll probably still learn the stuff because, there's so many unanswered questions. I have answered a lot of questions. I've written, 625 pages of this book so far. Manuscript pages, not book pages. That's probably about 450 book pages. But I think it'll have to be shortened a little bit. It's not supposed to be so long. Anyway, I have an editor, Jennifer Banks, who's very good at making things shorter in a very intelligent way. So I'll give her what I have, and then she'll make it shorter, and then maybe it'll be okay.